go.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Public Safety Committee for January 28th, 2025. Welcome. And the first order of our business is public comment. I have two sheets in front of me. First is Sherry Korth. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Sherry Cortez from Ithaca, New York. I haven't been to speak much because we were silenced from like 2020 onward. So I'm now finding my voice, I hope. And I first want to say thank Sheriff Osborne for the great job he has done in the county with his reimagining and how he handled it himself, and the city ended up spending a lot of money, and I don't know that we've even gotten our money's worth out of that yet. I saw Kathy Hochul's. I'm basically here to listen to your discussion about what Kathy Hochul has put out and hear what's being said about that. And then our other issues in this, as far as Tompkins County tax abatements, although you guys aren't that person, I don't get there that often, but they should stop. It's just digging deeper holes into us. And a lot of these new projects are using federal grants, like Asteri and Art House, and things are gonna start changing. So we need to be prepared, because once those tax abatements, they're already cutting into our budget in a deep, deep way. And everything the county and the city want is just can't happen if you continue giving this money to hedge funds and people to buy up the city. And it's not making us any safer. Our city is not safe, not like it was when I moved here in 2012. I really feel bad for the people that have lived here for 30 years that are having to see this change. But as a military brat, being in the military, my father's serving, I do want to make sure we stick to the Constitution. You know, the Constitution is what we go by. So I want to make sure we all do that. I know the sheriff does that, but everybody else also. So thank you much.
Thank you, Sherry. Next up, we have Amanda Kirchgessner.
Good afternoon. I came to talk about Code Blue, but I think it also reflects on what Sherry was sharing about the ways we legally assess people's mental health. Code Blue has been incredibly revealing. I'm not sure how closely all of you have looked at it, but what it does is it creates a legal mechanism for how law enforcement goes about assessing whether or not people have the mental fitness to choose whether or not they're safe to live outdoors during cold weather. And what I find really interesting about it is all the funding goes through DSS and none of it goes to law enforcement, as far as I can tell, who's often tasked with dealing with documenting process, which is incredibly cumbersome, as individuals get bounced and removed from hotels for creating unsafe environments, often get moved out of county, which then creates legal issues in other counties when they get kicked out of those hotels. I've witnessed this happen with more than one individual since the shelter closed. We're doing a really, really poor job of actually taking ownership of our responsibility. And while I've witnessed the court system make, its efforts to document whether somebody is capable of, possessing the mental fitness to aid in their own defense, it's a very, very intensive process, which can be done if there are community members who are vigilant in helping to document nonviolent misdemeanor offenses. It's easy to divert people into the court system here in Tompkins County because we have a wellness court, which is also, it's a burden on the taxpayers. But if we have a lot more pieces than most places in New York State, as far as I could tell. I wish I'd prepared more thoughtful comments, but I do know that 10% of New York State's Code Blue budget is allocated through our county. I know that the majority of that, as far as I can tell, goes through the Department of Social Services, and the people I see doing the most work around it are IPD and the Sheriff's Department, and a little bit of state trooper backup or enforcement. Yeah, so I don't know how we're gonna sort this one out, but I encourage us to take a closer look at what tools we have in place and how we as a community feel it's appropriate to help people who are absolutely in active mental health crisis, who absolutely need stabilization support. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the committee? Is there anybody online?
Nope.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming in. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we have minutes from our December 10th, 2024 meeting. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes? Mike moves, Shauna seconds. Questions or comments on the minutes? Ready to vote? We're all here. We can do a show of hands. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Okay. We're speeding through our agenda. I know we have some items we're going to spend some real time on, but I would like to take a little bit of time on the chair's report. First, to talk about our 2024 committee goals, and I'd like to talk about them and give a prod that at our next meeting we would be thinking about goals for 2025. But you can see them on page 14 of the agenda, and the first one was monitor the capital program at the jail to address needed upgrades, and I believe that's been going on. I think the jail is largely, those improvements are largely complete. Is that correct, Sheriff?
Yes, that's correct, Rich. Thank you.
And in one or two sentences, how's it working? Have they made a difference?
The upgrades?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They've made a difference. And I think you mentioned CAP there. We have had a lot of discussions regarding expanding the CAP program to include the city of Ithaca, namely the Ithaca Police Department. I know we talked in the past that the expansion of our temporary holding cell from 1 to 3 was probably not going to be big enough if we were to take on IPD in the future. That definitely remains the case. So we've had a lot of discussions around that. And I hope that in the upcoming years, if we look at our building again, that we take that into account, because it definitely would be a benefit to IPD and law enforcement in general if we could expand the CAP program to include them.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said there completely, Sheriff, that having a unified approach to the CAP court would be a real improvement to law enforcement, the whole system. So, yes, okay. But I think we did fulfill our goal for 2024 in terms of monitoring what was going on up there. And then the next priority we had was assess the reimagining public safety outcomes and determine next steps. And we got a lot of input from Mona Lita and from other directions. And I think we've managed through. I don't know if we're where we need to finally be, but I think it's an ongoing discovery. But we certainly worked on this in 2024 as we had hoped to do. Does anybody have any comment on that one? I'm just going to silence my phone here. No? Okay, I think we filled that goal. We might think about continuing that on an ongoing basis. The third one was monitor the implementation of the Rapid Medical Response Program. That seems to have worked exactly as we would have hoped it to do. So I'm pleased that we chose to go forward with that. And I think we've gotten good reports straight along. And I think the reporting system back to us is a good one to see what's happening. I anticipate we'll be talking about it today in the DOR report. Anybody have a comment there? Michael or Joe? Two?
Not at the moment, thank you.
Okay. We had a priority of considering implementation of a youth respite facility within the county. And we really didn't proceed very far on that. There seemed to be, we did get information from different directions, and the Social Services Department seemed to say that this was not an appropriate direction to go. But in the meantime, it allowed us to look at a lot of different sources of housing for homeless youth and youth who are in crisis. My impression there is that we have systems, but they're fairly fragmented. And I'm not sure they're adequate to what the full problem is, but it's hard to see what that problem is. And I'd invite further discussion on that, but maybe this is something that we continue when we're talking about priorities for 25. Comments, questions? I see a lot of pensive Lee?
Have we ever heard any numbers as far as the homeless youth that we were looking to address under this? Ballparks?
I went and toured the villages, is it? And talked with the director there. They're housing, I think, on the neighborhood of 6 youth, but their definition of youth goes up past 21 a little bit. And then Tompkins Community Action houses quite a few. Shauna, you might know better than any of us. How many youth do we have any sense of how many homeless youth we have?
I don't, actually. I know that Learning Web has an apartment building. The village had room for 6. My understanding is they might have 1 currently living in that apartment, 1 or 2.
It was more, but maybe it seems to go up and down.
Yeah.
Is this folding into the broader shelter design?
I mean, I think part of the issue is that the reimbursement is pennies to what it actually costs to operate these places. And OMH and all of the places that actually provide the certification make it really difficult for these places to operate. And so what ends up happening is that they have to jump through tons of hoops. They come out for inspections, they don't approve their inspections, and then we end up in a situation like we're in right now where we don't have a place to put our young people.
Yeah, I'm not sure we proceeded as far as we could have on this issue at Public Safety. We certainly spent a lot of time talking about shelter, but not specifically for youth. And I'm thinking this is a carryover, that we do need to think about this further. But I'd welcome comment.
Is there a need to isolate from a broader population?
I think there are reasons to do that, just like we have raise the age. The same issues can apply. You put a very young person into a all-age shelter.
I just wondering if it's appropriate to fold that into the design with the new shelter or the plans that we're looking at in the longer term.
From a public safety standpoint, I think that makes great sense, but.
Maury has his hand up.
Oh, Maury.
Yeah, I don't have any a specific comment on that. I would, assume that there's going to be some separation requirement because I think OCFS does not allow youths under the age of 18 to be sheltered with adults. So, are there ways to solve it? I suspect by separation, but it's something we'd need a DSS type to comment on in detail.
Yeah, certainly homelessness is one of those issues that straddles lots of different areas of county government, but I do think there is a role for public safety to play in thinking about it. So I guess more to come there. Let's see. Then we had monitor the implementation of the new functionality entailed in the new detox and stabilization capabilities for people experiencing addiction and/or a mental health crisis. We did not proceed on this very far because we're still really working on getting all that up and running. So I anticipate this would continue because it's still an important public safety priority, but we didn't get very far on it. And then monitor the gun-involved violence elimination grant program, and we certainly have received regular reports on what's happening there. And again, this seems to be a program that has made a difference in the community. I think that that was a successful focus for this committee. But I'd again welcome comment. Okay. And then finally, assess and compare aspects of the assigned counsel versus public defender programs. And we did look at that during the year. We got a report from assigned counsel and some estimates of cost if we went to a public defender model. I think a lot of the urgency around this issue seems to have been addressed by the change in rates, that fully staffing the assigned counsel program, as we see now, it's functioning much, much better. There do seem to be some knock-on effects with our district attorney, if you read the email he sent today. But I'm not sure that we would want to continue to think about setting up a public defender program right now. But I'd welcome somebody to argue with me if you feel differently. Okay. Those were our goals in 2024. And as I said, I think we should have a discussion at our next meeting on what we might think this committee should really be focusing on in this year. So more to come there, but I'd ask you to put on your thinking caps. And certainly from other directions as well, department heads, members of the public, if you see something you think we really should be focusing on and thinking about, and perhaps leading to budget recommendations on, think February. So the other item I wanted to talk about on Chair's report is the proposals coming out of the governor's office. Harlan McEwen sent these to me, these two articles that are in your agenda on page 19. And, you know, I sense they're going to have a monumental debate in Albany on this issue. Maybe it will all be killed in committee. But I think it's a good conversation to have. And certainly, you look at the history of where the state psychiatric hospitals were and the warehousing nature of them and the abuses that occurred, it made perfect sense that there was a reaction to that and a need to, you know, close them because they were not functioning in a responsible, respectful, dignified, humane way. With that said, you know, I look at what's happening in our community and I don't know that we're doing something dramatically better. It's harder to blame us because we don't have hands on the issue. But the whole point of what happened years ago was that we were going to transfer the responsibility to community agencies, and we were going to take on the role of making sure these people were safe here in our community. And we really didn't do that. We're not alone in that. The money wasn't there, and the political will wasn't there. So it just did not happen. But in my time on the legislature, seeing a persistent issue with our homeless population really living in tremendous danger, I struggle when people just reflexively say, no, we can't think about anything other than voluntary treatment. I don't think it's a light switch where it's either or. And I'd point to page 37 of our agenda where there's 2 letters to the Sheriff's Department talking about the care team. What we've done with the care team, I believe, is really instructive in terms of we probably will never do perfect, but we can do pretty good in reacting in a humane way to actually help people who are in mental health crisis. I see lots of scenarios where an involuntary treatment approach could be abused and it could be done wrong, but that doesn't mean that it can never be done appropriately. And as I said, the care team gives some indication that there probably is a way to do fair assessments to actually provide meaningful help to the people who absolutely need it. You know, and I understand the housing first approach, but also since I've been on the legislature, we have added a tremendous amount of affordable housing in our community. We have really done some very, very good work in making sure there are housing options. What I haven't seen is any appreciable change in the homeless population that is out there really struggling with mental illness and drug addiction. That I think the drugs and the trauma that they're undergoing are so powerful that they aren't able to access voluntary treatment. It is not really feasible. without somebody actually helping them, we don't get there. And I say that, because there's such an emphasis on using the term evidence-based. The evidence seems to be right there in front of us that we need to help these people, and we're not. Perhaps I've just lit the fuse. I hope so a little bit. I'd love to get reaction from other committee members. Is this something where we should be weighing in as a legislature to Albany to state our view? Shauna.
I think you bring up some really good points, Rich. I think right now the concern, and all of us have received the email in regards to a memo that was sent out by the White House this morning, talking about essentially cutting all of our federal funding. And so while I think that's an important battle, I think we're going to be dealing with some much bigger issues like Medicaid. I spoke with Cornell this morning. They're concerned about some of their student aid, some of their programming. Much of it is federal up there. Some of their research that they're doing, a lot of it is federal funded. And so as far as public safety concerns are, I would say that is definitely something we should talk about in the future. But without us having Medicaid, without us, having all these other programs that are safety nets in our community, I feel like there might be some bigger fish to fry.
You might be right. I find I open the paper, push the click on the paper each day with some trepidation because I just don't know what is going to be there. Yeah. Lee.
You kind of always come back to the same thing. What's the scope of the issue locally? How do we gauge that to move forward with any kind of a strategy? Amanda mentioned in her public comment, Code Blue kind of provides us with an opportunity to see what the extent of the problem is. There's a good gauge for assessing the mental fitness of those that choose to participate there. But I'm kind of wondering, is there any assessment, any idea, number of people that might be subject to these changes the governor is hinting at right now, where involuntary
the annual count is in the neighborhood of 70. The annual count done by the continuum of care, the number that sticks in my head is around 70 people. 70 people that might be subject to involuntary If you
admissions.
correlate those people to the ones struggling with mental illness or addiction to the point they can't care for themselves.
And have we talked about a number of the chronic homeless being somewhere in the 100 to 130 range? Is that?
Probably when you add in couch surfing and not living outdoors, but effectively homeless, that number might be. I think it's very hard to count, but.
So just for clarification, it's not 70 people that should be involuntarily institutionalized.
No.
That's not what you're referring to.
No,
Okay.
I was just trying to give a sense of how many people are living outdoors homeless.
Okay.
And some of them probably can cope and could deal with a far lower level of intervention. But I'm thinking of one person in particular that was given housing at the Asteri building and felt constrained and ended up camping on the corner of State and Meadow Street with 2 dogs, and you say, well, that's not where you should be camping, but certainly it's not fair to the dogs.
Sorry, is he exhibiting signs of mental illness and at risk of committing crimes other than the crime of existing?
I'm not.
Because I would not, I'm struggling to follow. I don't connect that to this potential involuntary incarceration, or whatever it's called, involuntary.
I would say somebody
catch and
who's
treat.
trying to sleep without a tent on the corner of a busy thoroughfare with 2 dogs is not coping. But I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. But again, we see this over and over again. I would like to see us help these people. This seems like somebody that needs help.
I'm not
can
gonna
disagree.
I'm not going to disagree with that. I am glad you brought up this topic, and I am frankly struggling to follow some of your logic and stringing things together from we have a lot of people living on the street, a bunch of people are mentally ill, the state at large apparently has issues with people who exhibit signs of mental illness and commit crimes as a crisis. There was something about especially people being pushed onto tracks, for better or for worse, we don't have trains. But I noticed these like highlights in here are all the pieces that try to connect all of that with involuntary catch and treat into hospitals and mental health facilities is the way to go. But that's not obvious to me at all. For one thing, the mental health and homelessness are related to each other. One exacerbates the other, but they're also fundamentally separate. Addiction too, in the same way, like any person can be suffering with any combination of any of those and not, and there's plenty of examples of all of this. And there's a lot of stuff in here saying, I'll try to stop rambling and just read bits that stood out to me. The Coalition for the Homeless has opposed efforts by Hochul, New York City Mayor Eric Adams to increase involuntary commitments, with the group noting in part that the process reflects the same socioeconomic disparities found in other coercive systems. In New York City, which has the highest number of Kendra's law orders, which does involuntary mental health commitment, there was a significant overrepresentation of both Black people, 44% of commitments versus 23% of the New York City population, and people with prior experiences of being unhoused, 26% of commitments versus 1% of the New York City population. The real problem, this is New York Civil Liberties Union Director, asserted the real problem is there are not nearly enough mental health care resources available, noting housing shortage also play in the role in the issue. And the other article had someone who seems to support this decision, or support this being part of the decision, but went on to say what's even less expensive is connecting someone with supportive housing. We know this, but those are units and buildings that have services for tenants on site, like mental health counseling or help with employment. New York has built more supportive housing in recent years, but Simone said the state should double down on development as a key part of its strategy on mental health without exacerbating the stigma that already exists around it. And to me, I think, a multi-pronged approach make more sense. A giving people what they need and meeting them where they are approach makes more sense. It costs money, this would cost money, but when you say, you talked about connecting people voluntarily with voluntary treatment isn't working, that doesn't mean that they need to be coerced. I'm not an expert, maybe I am gonna say that it doesn't anyway, but it would raise the question, why? Is there not enough voluntary treatment? Are you offering an option that doesn't work for the person because of this, that, and the other? Because I think we forget all the people we're imagining are complex people with complex histories and complex lives, just like each of us. And not everything is gonna work for every person.
Okay. I agree with a lot of what you said, but Mike, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I don't see why they are two separate tracks when they could be on the same track. I don't think you guys are actually that far apart. When it comes to supportive housing, I think that's actually something the IDA should take up. If our IDA says you need to have 20% of certain kind of housing, or you buy your way out. Maybe you eliminate the buyout and say, you're going to have this 20% of housing, but that buyout fund has to go to putting support staff into that building. Or if you do buyout, that's fine, then you don't need that. But if you're going to have something like a Steri, yes, you have to have that support staff. And then you have to anticipate that you're going to have more people in there that probably need support than just those 40 units. And that may be something we do work with the IDA and make that a requirement of people that are going to build that kind of housing. But on the other hand, there are going to be people like that man who died out here who didn't want to go to the shelter. dude, it's under a certain degree, you're coming with us. Like, I'm sorry, you're going to die. And you can call that involuntary commitment if you want. You can call it something else, but that, you can't just leave people on the street to die. If I pick you up and you've overdosed and I've got to wake you up with Narcan, yeah, that you can call that involuntary commitment. You've got a problem. And it's a problem that's going to kill you. And so, yes, I believe the more, care for your neighbor way would be involuntary commitment in that instance. So,
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the IDA, wearing a different hat. There's a project we approved that's going to be on the corner of Meadow and Seneca Street that I think is the right mix. It's not built yet, so we don't know how it's really going to operate, but it's intensive support, and it's really well-staffed with enough people that people won't just go there and be forgotten. The idea, Veronica, you used that phrase, meet them where they're at. And I always feel like that's half a sentence. Meet them where they're at, and what? Do you keep them there? If they're addicted to fentanyl or methamphetamine and the new drugs are so strong, they're not going to be able to stop using those drugs on their own. Well, what do? Unless you do more than just meet them and listen to them, nothing will happen. And I'm not saying this applies to everybody. There are people who are living outside that are coping and can manage, but where you have clear evidence of heavy-duty drug use and mental illness and crisis, I agree with Mike. At some point you have to say, for this instance, we should be doing more. And it doesn't matter if it's voluntary or involuntary. We need to help them. But anyway.
Well, the juncture here for the committee is, are they a threat to the public safety to themselves or to the community? And that's where I'm trying to get a better understanding.
Well, Governor Hochul is saying something a little different here. I mean, she's saying not just that, but that they cannot care for themselves, that they can't function. And maybe that's too far. But I think this is a conversation we should have here.
By that paragraph for us.
This would allow the state to, in part, involuntarily admit to hospitals or mental health facilities people who are at immediate risk because they can't care for their basic needs.
But then the next sentence too.
The current laws require that authorities determine the person being committed poses an imminent risk to harm themselves or others. So it is something new and different, what she's talking about. Whether this is the right approach or not, I think we should figure out what our opinion is and share it with the state.
But that somewhat indicates that we have some ability now for those that are.
Yes.
I think we need to recognize that be careful what you wish for. That if we're saying we should have additional powers, those are going to be expensive. Yeah, we would need to commit real money to this. Again, I'm one of 14. My thought is that this is the work before us. But yes,
And my thought
expensive.
is it's absolutely not the work before us.
Okay.
And the other 12 can do what you want with that.
All right. Anyway, I introduced that. I'd like us to think about that and maybe pick this up again for further discussion. But if anybody has any further thoughts at this point. Mike.
one further thought. If it was a senior citizen and they could not care for themselves, we don't put our senior citizens on icebergs. Just going to put that out there for you.
Fortunately, we don't have icebergs. But,
I think you understand what I mean.
but yes, your metaphor is well taken. Okay. Next up, County Administration. Corso, welcome to your first public safety meeting. This is really exciting.
It's going to be off the hook, buddy.
Yes, I'm off the hook today. So I think we have some resolutions. I'll invite, I believe Bridget has something, and also we have something from the Community Response Network.
Okay. All right. You have a couple resolutions?
Yeah, Bridget?
All right.
Hello, everyone. Did we want to get the resolution on the floor?
Okay, this is acceptance of 2024-2025 New York State Criminal Justice Discovery Reform Grant Funding, Doc ID 12970. Could I get a motion? Lee moves. Veronica seconds. Thank you. Anything you want to say about this? This looks like we've got some grant money.
Yeah, this is the routine allocation from the state to support the county's efforts following discovery reform. It initially goes through the district attorney's office, and then we create an allocation plan for other supportive departments that we submit to the state. In the resolution, it outlines what was already budgeted for in 2025, and then the remaining funding that we receive from the state and how that will be allocated.
Okay, questions or comments? I think we want the money. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Oh, Lee?
It's not a substantial change from the last fiscal year, is it?
No.
Essentially about the same dollars,
Yes.
same purposes. Okay,
Yes.
Sorry.
that's all right.
Okay, are we ready to vote? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Great. Okay. And then we have a presentation from the Community Justice Center. Mona, you want to come forward?
Good afternoon, everybody. Bear with me, I got a little bit of a head cold, but I'm not contagious. So, thanks for having me this afternoon. I just wanted to come and talk about the sustainability of the CJC for 2025. So 2024 was a tough year. We really did make some strides. We also still face some challenges, so I just wanted to share out some information, with the Public Safety Committee. So there is a presentation that was included in your agenda packet. I don't know if we're going to pull it up on the screen or anything of that nature, but it's just, we start with, what our premise is. We run under the vision, mission, and values of the city and the county. And then the county has another one that was added that I didn't get on this slide, which is the stewardship.
Mona,
Yeah.
if you'd like to join the Zoom, you can share your screen.
Okay, that won't make the noise crazy?
No, not as long as you have it muted.
Okay. Give me 1 second here.
I think you can also join a Zoom without connecting the audio, or if it does it automatically, disconnect audio to be extra safe.
This audio up there. Okay. There we go. Okay. So yeah, that's the missions, the visions, and the values for both the city of Ithaca and Tompkins County, since this is a collaborative. So an overview of the initiative and what the CJC has identified as what our roles are is we're here to bridge the gap between the community and law enforcement, manage the implementation of the joint plans, and try to reduce any disproportionate minority contact. We came up with 3 themes for the continued work, and that's transparency and accountability, community healing and engagement, and upstream resource delivery. So every one of the plans that we are working on fall underneath one of those themes. So for transparency and accountability, we've got the community dashboard, recruitment and retention, and the CJC visibility. Community healing and engagement is the community healing that we're working on with law enforcement, our youth engagement initiatives, community celebrations and officer wellness, and then our upstream resource delivery, our community resource hubs. We have 6 of those now, which we'll talk about the successes, and that's where they fall under. So alternative response and wraparound services is one of the huge successes we have, which is the resource hubs. And then we have the partnership with the Southside Community Center for the mural that is up over in Baby Bank Alley. And I'm still getting comments and tagged, and people are reaching out about how amazing that is. People have access to the website where it's on YouTube, it's a documentary, and it kind of follows through from the very start with interviews and things of that nature with the young people from Southside along with the artist. So with the resource hubs, we have the representation of a proactive approach with a community that aligns with the philosophy of prevention. So we have 6 resource hubs. We have helped or provided services or resources for 76 community members in 2024, which is up from 37 in 2023. Community healing, our goal is to foster the meaningful engagement between community members and our law enforcement. Last year we had 6 community conversations. The attendance for each session ranges anywhere from 15 to 20 people with about 4 or 5 law enforcement officers with us. So then we had a Friendsgiving event in November, and that was actually part of the discussion we had in October of our community healing event, and we talked about doing something a little bit more social. And so we had about 50 people that were there with Ithaca Police Department and our community stakeholders. Calvary Baptist Church was gracious enough to host us in their space. It was a dish to pass, and it was good. It was really good. I mean, the people in the community were really appreciative of it, along with law enforcement. Some were on duty, so they came in uniform, some came in plain clothes. And, we always stage the area so we have questions or topics that we can discuss, but we didn't have to use them. It was really organic. The law enforcement just kind of mixed and mingled with community members. They didn't all section off and sit with themselves, and so it was really informative. A lot of our community members were pretty impressed with how relaxed and receiving they were. If we continue with successes, the mural project is on here, so that's the link right there where you can go and look at it. We do have a mural project activity workbook that has been distributed. Some school teachers, art teachers, have received them. They're also available at GX, Southside Community Center, and any one of the resource hubs that I'm at. We have those available. Alliance for Family Justice has just hit me up and said they would like some to be available in their space. And what it is it's the mural, it's all the action steps for the mural, and then the young people have the opportunity to express themselves with the same exact questions or thoughts on healing and trauma. Our community dashboard is going well. It's promoting transparency. It's providing data-driven insights. So it was launched in April of 2024. In the last 90 days, we've had 60 visitors to the community dashboard. I just had a meeting last week with Alliance for Family Justice, and a conversation was brought up about a digital divide. So Matthew and I are looking at that. How do we get this information out to our community members that may not be online? Or help them understand a little bit more the information that they are looking at if they're on there. Visibility of the CJC. So we had the launch of the newsletter in February of 2024. Our number of subscribers increased from 2,800 to 31, and then the number of newsletters that are read also increased from 1,466 to 1,560. So that's exciting that people are still looking for the information and they're still interested. Some of the challenges that we faced last year, and we'll continue to face, but we're working with them, is the lack of participation and support for the initiative. The reduction of funding is obviously a challenge, and people's perception for the need for police reform has really changed. It's been quite a while, since we started this whole entire project, but and then we've lost some trust with some key community stakeholders, so we're working on rebuilding that.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit further about that, people's perception, because it did seem like the whole country was focused on this issue, and It has faded somewhat.
Right, it has faded. There was a lot of noise when it first happened, a lot of interest in things need to be done. And what I've learned is that if you don't have something tangible immediately, then people kind of start to fade away from it. So we're working on rebuilding the interest in this. How do we get you back engaged or re-engaged with the work that needs to be done? Because nothing's changed. We just haven't had another huge incident. And we definitely don't want one here in Tompkins County. So we just have to get people re-engaged. And so that's what we're working on. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we've had. Let's see. So emerging opportunities. So we're having an increase in our community partnerships. I've had a couple different agencies reach out to the CJC and want to meet. I'm going to be meeting with Law New York next week. I met with Alliance for Family Justice last week. And part of that is to see how we can partner with delivering resources and services to our community. So a lot of them are interested in our community resource hubs. How can they come out and share the resources that they have available? We're increasing our work with some local law enforcement to pilot a new data collection. It'll be on traffic information. I'll put that out there. We have a partnership with Cornell University's ILR School, the High Road Internship Program. We have an intern that has started with us, and she's going to be working on CJC visibility through social media. We've had numerous people say they can't find information on us unless they go digging through the county's website. So how do we get more transparency out there for people to share that information out? Partnership with Cougar Health, and that has to do with our officer wellness. And then as Dominic Recchio takes on his new role as a deputy city manager, we're going to have some increased work with them. Our partnership will be strengthened. He's got an insight into this, and then we're in the process of exploring a peer support mental health services for law enforcement. We've had some officers reach out and say that that's something that they needed. One of the things that in particular IPD referred to was the tragic incident that happened over on the south side of town with the husband and wife, and how devastating it was, and how they felt like once they got back to the station, there was really no one there to help them debrief and try and digest what they went through. So we're looking into that. A priority areas for us this year will remain the community hubs, so we're further investing in them by possibly expanding the hub hours, continually increasing our community resource partnerships, and then informing our community around response types beyond law enforcement. So that is some of the conversations that we have, other than, you know, helping them with resources, is talking about law enforcement and any contact that anyone has had with them. Community healing will continue the regular conversations with our impacted community members and law enforcement. We're going to partner with them for community-wide events. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we're looking at some things that they already do. How does the CJC partner with them? And then we will have some newly created events. And then we're going to work on additional strategies to strengthen the relationship so that we can all have a deeper understanding. And then the traffic data collection is going to be a big one. And that's something that IPD is interested in working on with us. Our dashboard, Matthew, even though he's under assigned counsel, he's still working with the CJC on the dashboard. So we're working on building the current list of reports and displays and increasing relationships that will show what law enforcement to develop the new data collection, and then pilot new collection projects to increase in transparency. So. And last but not least is the last of our project areas is officer wellness. So right now we are in partnership with Cougar Health and the Ithaca Police Department. We just had our initial meeting on Monday. Through a survey that was done a couple years ago, nutrition and dietitian services were identified as something that law enforcement was interested in. So Cougar Health went into the 7 a.m. and the 3 p.m. briefings on Monday with IPD. They have a dietitian and a nutritionist on staff that went down, and they will be working on setting up one-on-one and lifestyle medicine consultations with the providers in person or through telehealth, and will review and make recommendations for on-site nutritional practices over at the department. And then they're also going to offer group consultation and education. So that's pretty exciting. It took a while to get that moving, but they have started. And then the recruitment and retention. So we're still in the development process of an applicant tracking system. How do we follow through with keeping people engaged? We have people that express an interest in law enforcement, but then by the time the test comes up, they've kind of faded away and we've lost them. So with this applicant tracking system, we're looking at ways that we can keep them engaged all the way up until testing. And whether that's partnering with law enforcement officers, reaching out to them, or holding events, Saturday afternoon, we're going to meet with IPD at the Holiday Inn in the banquet room, and we're going to talk about the civil service exam, or we're going to meet with public safety or doer, and we're going to talk about how how do you stay engaged with them. So, and then advertising activities and other recruitment strategies. So those are our project areas so far for 2025.
Okay.
And that was a lot. I talk really fast, so let me know what your questions are.
Well, let's open it up to questions. Shauna, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mona. This is great work. I wanted to ask about the officer wellness and specific to the mental health. One thing that I learned whenever I did the ride-along a few years ago was that obviously the people that are serving in our sheriff's department as well as IPD, they're seeing a lot of things that can sometimes be really disturbing. And they gave me an example. There was one deputy who was very young, his first week of working, and there was a young girl who was struck by a drunk driver out in Trumansburg. He was the first to the scene there, and then I think was also the first to the scene of a drowning at Buttermilk Falls. And, talk about trauma in your first week. Mm-hmm. I can imagine stuff like this is happening quite often. And what as a county and what is your department able to do to help deputies and officers that are seeing this type of trauma? And, I understand that there's also kind of a tough guy mentality of wanting to just get through another day and forgetting about it. But I think there's also the ability to talk to someone, a healthcare professional, and, work through what you might have seen. Is there something that we're able to offer as a county?
Well, we are working on, they identified the want, I will call it, for a mental health expert that has experience with law enforcement. And so we are doing our due diligence and research and working with them to try and identify who that person is. They may not be local. We would like it to be local because then we feel like there's a vested interest, but if we can't find one that's local, then, we have to go outside the box and outside of Tompkins County to find it. So we are trying to figure that part out.
Would that be offered for the Sheriff's Department and IPD?
Yes.
Great,
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Joe.
I just wanted to let you guys know that the Department of Emergency Response, Danielle and I have been working on, among some others from around the county, establishing a CISM team, Critical Incident Stress Management, that identifies just that. It's a team of individuals that can be deployed at really mentally taxing calls for any first responder, whether fire, EMS, or law enforcement. That actually goes live next week. There'll be a press release on that. But also Danielle's working on a peer support group as well that could also be utilized in the event that any officer or any first responder in general needs some mental health help.
That's great.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Mike.
I was just curious about that applicant tracking under officer retention. I would have been surprised if the Sheriff's Department and IPD don't already do that. I mean, do we not do that at this point?
I don't know.
Good question.
Sheriff or Jennifer.
They can't tell we're staring at them.
Right now, when an exam is open, civil service posts it for usually 30 to 45 days, and we can see the incoming applications. And we make sure we make contact with all the applicants and stay in contact with them up until the exam. We'll usually offer 2 or 3 training sessions around what to expect for the civil service exam or the PT test. There's definitely areas of improvement, but right now, applications are only coming in once civil service exam has been posted to the Human Resources website.
Okay. Lee.
2 questions, Mona. With the 76 community members that receive services, is there any particular area where you're seeing a need or where they're looking for help, where you're able to provide some?
Yeah, Groton is definitely my more high volume need out there, and then the YMCA.
Type of services?
Type of services, oh boy, they range from, heating and help with heating resources or SNAP benefits. It all depends on, it actually looks like it all depends on what season we're in, whether or not, what's going on. So I have partners that come with me out there right now. It's whole health. And so they're finding their table is often flooded with different questions on services that they offer. I think, like I said, it ranges. So we had senior citizens that were interested in services for Office of the Aging. And so I had them come out, Office for the Aging, come out and visit the resource hub so that everyone can do that. It really depends on the individual, but I would think most of it is connecting with some medical resources and then transportation.
That's good to know, good background. The second question I had, trying to understand what does inform community around response types beyond law enforcement?
Other options, alternatives to having any response. So I had a woman come to me out in Groton and ask me about the care team through the sheriff's department. She had a grandson who was having some type of mental health episode, and she wanted to know more about the care team because she said the experience with them was absolutely outstanding. And it was a much different experience than she'd had with just law enforcement. So they wanted to talk, a lot of times they want more information about, well, do you do that for other, other situations? Is it just for law enforcement or not? So that's what that refers to.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Veronica.
I think I had a comment and a question. One about the resource hubs. This is maybe talking to everyone but you, Mona, but if I can share, I was at the Alliance of Families for Justice meeting briefly that she mentioned, and something that stuck out to me when you were sharing about the resource hubs was saying that one of the main, or a major piece of the value that they have is Mona's brain specifically, and all the experience that has gone into it, and your your cohesive knowledge of services and systems that are available and ability to, but also, being a person you can interact with and not a website. And that's, it sounds like that's been really valuable and not replaceable by something not human. Although speaking of the website, I did spend a bunch of the presentation trying to look up the CJC page on the website because I mistakenly thought there was one. There's not one. And I'm wondering, and for anyone in the public who doesn't know, the county website recently updated, so there's still some growing pains in there, but also I can find the CJC dashboard and really nothing else at all. So I'm wondering what is in the works for having things like, any kind of landing page for the CJC. I'll also notice when you look up Community Justice Center, what you do find is the Department of Probation and Community Justice.
Yep.
So I wonder if there's a CJC page, if the Probation and Community Justice page could also link to it, because people will probably accidentally end up there.
No, I actually get phone calls all the time when someone says they tried to find us and that's what they got was that. What I found, and I just did it the other day again just to make sure, is that if you go to the county admin page, it's under Reimagining Public Safety. It doesn't say Community Justice Center. And so then you can find newsletters and things of that sort. So like I said, with this new work study student coming on, she's amazing. She's got a lot of skills that I don't have. So she'll do some work with Rob, and that's one of the things, how do people find us? They can't find that information. So we're hoping to get her a little bit of access, and she can start sharing some of that out, and then people will be able to get more information.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I guess also, I know part of the point of things like the resource hubs is that people can find you without having to use the internet and the website. And also it's useful that people can find you through the website.
Right.
It's both and.
Yep.
I was curious, I know you're working on the recruitment. Have you had success? Have you had anybody get all the way through yet, or not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. Well, keep fighting.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And please come back. Thank you. keep us updated. All right. Corsa, is there anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Next up is the Sheriff's Office. And welcome to our Sheriff and Undersheriff. We have some resolutions, but I think there's also some things I was hoping we could just spend a little bit of time talking about. And Sheriff, you had some information you wanted to share regarding body cameras.
Yeah, if you would allow me, and I'll get to that in a second, and if you wouldn't mind, I'll probably just share a few slides that I discussed with you previously, Rich, but you should have our report that's showing up blurry on my screen in your packets, our monthly report. There's some good training in there that was conducted this past month. Also some good kudos for our care team, which has been coming in on a regular basis. And just a couple updates. The second care team finished their training on January 13th, and they are now out on their own, conducting their own work. And as we mentioned in the past, we tried to shift their hours a little bit more in the evening to provide more service to the community over longer periods of time. We also finished our 2025 goals, and those were shared with county admin, and I'm sure you will all be receiving them soon. And of course, if you have any input on that or some things you think we could take on that maybe you don't see there, we're open to the conversation. But yeah, the legislature, speaking of body cams, if you recall, you invested for us another $41,000 to extend the body cam program from our road patrol into our corrections division. This was smartly done, I feel, well ahead of the incident in New York State Prison at the Marcy location. So I kind of feel like we were definitely ahead of the game on that big thing that came out. And I got to say, our motivation behind the program was not due to a lack of trust in our correction officers. We have an outstanding crew that performs a very, very difficult job. And I'm proud to say, since implementing the program last August, we've not initiated one discipline matter against a single employee based on an observation seen on a body cam. Similar to our road patrol program, body cam footage has, more than anything, aided us in countering claims of wrongdoing by employees. So there's definitely a benefit there. Our overall goal was to hopefully curb bad behavior of our incarcerated folks that may decide to act up, reduce incidences that could lead to the utilization of force, and reduce false accusations against staff, thereby limiting costly liability to the county and taxpayers. Unfortunately, I have to report that our union president did file an improper practice charge against the body cams. We're currently handling that. In talking to our attorney, we're definitely on solid ground, and I have no concerns to report over the handling of that. Interestingly, their bargaining ability is really limited when it comes to equipment. They can bargain for how it impacts them. It's called impact bargaining. Although I'm failing to see how it negatively impacts their working environment. The body cam itself, I mean, the only thing I can think of, you do put it on your uniform shirt, and it's definitely no more heavy or burdensome than a pair of handcuffs or a firearm. It seems the focus has somehow shifted to our ability to review the recordings for disciplinary purposes. Things like not being able to look at a body cam video that's more than 14 days, just to give an example. But it also came with a demand for very extensive raises, a $5,000 immediate raise with retroactivity for correction officers and a $6,000 raise for first-line supervisors, with a request for an automatic one-year contract extension with another 3.5% raise on top of that. So I think if you do the math, this equates to an immediate raise of about 14 to 15%, just for giving them, a body cam that I feel protects them. As we've talked in the past, I obviously fully support pay increases for our correction officers. Their current contract will expire at the end of this year, and I'm hopeful that we can get a jump on that and start reopening negotiations to get to the head of the game. The financial investments we and you had made in our current contract have clearly helped with ongoing recruitment and retention. And I believe still that we're the only jail in New York State that I know of that's fully staffed. Again, I mean, I bring this to your attention because pay raises are obviously in your control, not mine. And I wouldn't tell you to not provide these raises or requesting to, but I just feel tying such high increases to the implementation of body cams is a really bad look, in my opinion, especially given recent events in the state prison. During our last meeting on January 23rd with legal counsel, there was a comment made that, we didn't understand corrections work and that body cams were actually harming relationships between correction officers and those that are incarcerated in our facility. Not wanting to, or accepting the fact, I should say, that maybe I did miss something. We decided right after the meeting to do a survey of our incarcerated folks to see how they felt about it. Again, not because I implemented this program because I was concerned about the feelings of those incarcerated. That wasn't my goal, but I thought the results were pretty interesting. And if you don't mind, I'll share them with you quickly.
Yes, please.
Yes, I'm getting to it. Can you see that?
Yes. It's
Okay.
The print's a little small, but.
Yes, it is. I apologize for that. So on January 23rd, like I said, we had 68 or 67 housed in our facility. The survey was completely voluntary, of course. They were handed a survey form. 33 decided to respond, so about half. The first question, we only asked them a few questions. We wanted to know if they were aware that we even implemented the program. And out of the 33 that responded, 25 answered that they were. The next question was, speaking to the concerns of the union president, do you feel safer or less safe as an incarcerated person knowing COs are wearing body cams? Overwhelmingly, they said they felt safer. Some reported less safe. It was a small handful. Some actually wrote on the form that they felt indifferent or neither. And there was a few that just said, indicated other, and there was some various comments associated with that I'm not going to go over today. The next question was, with body cams in place, do you trust COs more or less? I was shocked myself. Overwhelmingly, they said they trusted them more. Some, of course, did say they trust less. Some said neither or other, which went along with comments such as, I would never trust a correction officer and nothing's going to change that, which is understandable being an inmate. And lastly, just the general question, do you think body cams are a good idea or bad? And most did answer that they felt they were a good idea. So I am recommitted to this program. I think it was a smart decision. I think it has positive impacts. We haven't been able to really study our use of force numbers, apples to apples. Like I said, we started the program in August, so we wanted to look at August to December, year to year. But as you know, this last period of time for this year, a lot of the inmates were boarded out to Tompkins County because of work. But anecdotally, we have seen from experience a decline in the amount of force that has resulted, since they were put in place. So that's it. I just wanted to share that with you. And
Yeah, thank you, Sheriff.
yeah, and honestly, obviously I'll answer any questions you have, and I'm trying to figure out how to unshare my screen, so bear with me.
Well, while you're trying to do that, I'm curious, when do you think this grievance would get heard?
Well, we're trying to negotiate it now. Bear with me. Hold on. There we go. So at the end of the day, like I said, they have the right to impact bargaining, and we're certainly hearing them out. And we're in the middle of going back and forth right now. It probably will go to a hearing, arbitration hearing at some point. At the end of the day, not having impact bargaining, it may end up in your laps as far as legislative imposition. So I wanted you to have the information up front because I think your investment was a good one, and I think it's had positive impacts for everybody's safety in our facility, and I certainly want to see the program continue.
I agree with you, Sheriff, and I hope this is not an issue or an impediment to effective contract negotiations, because I think this is good for the corrections officers. You know, certainly seeing what happened at Marcy, it was great to be ahead of the curve here and to know that we've got controls in place. I think it's good for every single.
And again, I don't think it's everybody's feelings. It's probably only a few. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to see it hurt contract negotiations either, because they do have a very difficult job. We have an outstanding team. They definitely deserve pay raises. And of course, I'll fight for that. But I don't want it to leave a negative taste and have that impact that in any way, certainly.
Certainly. Okay, anybody? Comments, questions? Shauna?
Yeah, so I definitely want to acknowledge the correction officers have very, very hard jobs, and I want to make sure that we acknowledge that. But these are two separate conversations, and you know, if anything, my assumption would be that the cameras are protecting their actions, but they're also protecting the inmates as well. And so we made this decision, last year, right? And I think it was an investment because it only takes one lawsuit to really wipe us out as a county. And, you know, it provides a true sense of what happened whenever we are able to go back and look at the footage. So I hope that, I think I'll be part of the negotiating team. And, you know, I hope we can enter that with good faith and really have some real conversations about what's going on here.
Okay, anybody else? All right. Are we ready to proceed to resolutions? Or did anybody have any questions on the Sheriff's Department report? I did mention the letters on page 37. I think they're worth reading. It is really gratifying to see what's happened with the care team, and it's terrific news that the second team is on the road. That's really, really good. So, okay, we have multi-year authorization to accept the Law Enforcement Technology LETEC 2024-2025 grant, Sheriff's Office, Doc ID 13033. Could I get a motion? Lee moves, Veronica seconds. Sheriff, is there anything you want to tell us about this?
That's just a continuation of the grant we received last year. We didn't spend all the funds, so we're hoping to carry it over into 2025. This is a program that provided for law enforcement technology. We were able to purchase all new cameras for our road patrol and members here that take photos at scenes. We also purchased license plate readers and a true dark device that tests drugs to give us an idea of what they are in a way that the deputy doesn't have to touch them or handle them. So a lot of good stuff has come out of this.
Okay, are we ready to vote? All those in favor? That's unanimous. We have multi-year authorization to accept the Gun-Involved Violence Elimination GIVE 2024-2025 grant, Sheriff's Office, Doc ID 13032. Could I get a motion? Lee moves, Mike seconds. Sheriff, do you want to talk to this one?
Sure. It's, again, outstanding funds that are mostly tied up with flock safety. I actually plan on getting with you, Rich, and discussing this further at our next meeting, hopefully. It may come with a resolution. We have to make some changes. But as you know, flock has been very slow in getting permitting, and so the money just keeps getting carried over. We certainly don't want to use it, but my hope is that we can discuss flock more at our next public safety meeting.
Certainly. And I was going to ask how we're doing with placement of cameras and detection equipment.
Yeah, I can tell you, Rich, now that they have made some progress with the state right of ways. but it's going to take a resolution from you folks to shift that for them to, or for the state to accept it. And there's also some wording in there that's they're requiring Flock to transfer ownership of the devices from Flock over to us, which is very bizarre to me, and I'm not sure I fully understand it at this point, but that's what we're working on now, and I'll bring it all to your attention next month.
Okay, whatever we can do to help. I'd love to see that up and running fully. Okay, and then appropriation from contingent fund, replacement pay and terminal pay reimbursement. Sheriff's
Sorry, wait,
Office.
I have a question on the previous resolution.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Which I didn't read it carefully, but I saw that the city of Ithaca had some similar like flock detection equipment resolution. So is the process is the city in a similar boat with the company as you all are that you're going to tell us more about next month?
Well, it's not quite similar, Veronica, because they have a partnership with NYSEG that they're able to utilize to install these devices. We have a lot more state right-of-ways than the city does with all the highways coming in and out of the county and where we're choosing to place these devices. So that process was very cumbersome with the state, and they were actually refusing them for a while. But Flock has gained some headway with them, but for some reason the state wants a resolution from the legislature, which is probably a good idea, granting permission to do this. And they also want us, or Flock, to shift the burden of ownership from Flock to us. That part I don't fully understand yet. I'm trying to get a handle on it. So I think it's similar, but it's a little bit different.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds like
Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but.
more to come.
Yeah.
More to come.
Yeah, more to come, yes.
All right. Okay, good?
Yeah, I think we need to vote on it.
I hadn't moved. I thought we did. Didn't we vote on the?
I think we moved.
Moved and seconded, but
Did we vote?
Okay.
I don't think we.
All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. See, I'm going too fast. Appropriation from contingent fund, replacement pay and terminal pay reimbursement, Sheriff's Office, Doc ID 13024. Could I get a motion? Shauna moves, Veronica seconds. Thank you. Okay. This seems pretty straightforward. Anything you'd want to say, Sheriff?
No, this is a standard resolution we try to do 3 or 4 times a year per county policy, so I think everybody understands it at this point.
Okay, any questions or comments? Ready to vote? All those in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, anything further, Sheriff?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. The district attorney is traveling to a conference. He sent out an email earlier, and I just mentioned he gave an update on the CAP court, and it does seem like that's working pretty well, although he did also raise some issues regarding having sufficient staffing to do all the things that his office needs to do. He's budgeted for 9 attorneys, and he's at 7. And it sounds like there's some structural issues that are making it harder to hire. So we probably will be having some further conversation about that in February. But you can go back and read his email if you didn't get to it. So, okay. Department of Emergency Response. I see we have representatives from there. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Rich. How are you today?
Just great. Just great.
Right. I think we'll start with EMS if that's okay, unless you had any questions you wanted to start off with.
Any questions, anybody? No, go ahead.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah, so you guys should have our 2024 totals in the Tomstat report. Ultimately, we did a little over 800 calls in the year, in the seven months of 2024 that we were in service. Our busiest township continues to be Lansing. They did over roughly half of our calls that year. So far this year, we're on track to do roughly 1,300 calls. So that's going to be quite a busy year for us. Looking at some new metrics, so far for 2025, our average time from dispatch to on scene is a little over 8 minutes. And we're waiting roughly 6 minutes on scene for a transport ambulance to show up. So definitely showing where we can, where we've shortened some of those response times. we wanted to take a moment to recognize one of our staff members as well as 3 Enfield firefighters. Yesterday, they responded to what came in as a stroke patient. Our employee, Kim, arrived first on scene. She entered the house and her carbon monoxide alarm started going off. So she was able to evacuate the house with the exception of the patient who was not able to ambulate on her own. The fire department toned out for more manpower to bring SCBA and masks to the scene so they could go in and get the patient. But the 4 that were on scene determined that they didn't have time to wait, and they made the decision to go in and grab the patient and bring the patient out. We just got confirmation from the hospital that the patient was not having a stroke, that she was showing end signs of carbon monoxide poisoning, and they were congratulated by the doctor at CMC because she had life-threatening levels of carbon monoxide in her blood, and they felt that had they waited for the fire department, she probably would not have made it. But prognosis is really good. She's awake, she's doing great, and she's due to be discharged in the next couple of days.
Wow, that's a good example. Yeah, okay. Well, let's talk about the rapid medical response. Any comments from the committee? Questions? I certainly did have some thoughts regarding the trends on page 55, that it's interesting to me that Dryden, Groton, and Ulysses have very low usage because they have ambulance services, and the city of Ithaca and the town of Ithaca have very low usage because of the presence of Bang's ambulance there, it seems. Those are my assumptions, but this has seemed to have played out as we anticipated it would, that it's made a significant positive difference in the very specific municipalities that really didn't have access to ambulance service nearby. So it's working as we had intended, but it also seems to highlight the issues raised in our discussion about how to appropriately allocate cost, that perhaps the residents that are benefiting from it should be carrying some of that cost for the benefit they're receiving. But again, I think maybe we've crossed that bridge and we're beyond it. But it's pretty stark. Any other committee members or anybody else?
I'm going to withhold my thoughts till we've got a full year behind us and continue to see where these trends go. But yeah, but clearly there's an impact, a positive impact being made here. So
yes, it is positive. Anyway, Veronica. Pass. Pass. Okay. All right. Thank you. What else from Dewar?
So Rich, the only other thing is I think you received the invitation to the open house for the new 911 center here on Brown Road. Our team will be moving back on February the 12th, and we're pretty much putting the final touches on it this week.
Yeah, I certainly have it on my calendar. And actually, that reminds me, page 63, I wrote on the top of my agenda here, wow. It sounds like the new backup center was in some danger, and a good, quick response saved a tremendous amount of heartache and
no
money.
doubt, and a significant amount of money. We've been able to work with Cornell, who's been a really great partner with regards to the backup center, and we've put in some mitigative steps to prevent anything like that from happening in the future. It turned out to be a roof drain that had once had some heat tape on it to provide, an opportunity for the water to drain out. When that froze over, the roof essentially flooded, and then it penetrated through the membrane around a secondary drain, and that's what leaked into the space. So it's we've been able to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Any question on the report from Dewar this month? Okay, you have some resolutions. I think we're on page 65. authorization to accept a grant from the Triad Foundation, Inc., to the Department of Emergency Response and in support of countywide partner agencies, Doc ID 13016. Veronica moves. Lee seconds. Thank you. Okay. Anything you want to say about this grant?
So we were provided this grant and asked that the emergency services agencies that responded to the large brush fire a month or so ago, somehow or another we can benefit all those agencies that responded. We do have a meeting tonight with the fire chiefs, and we're going to recommend that we use that to update some of the radios that are, antiquated for the fire services. So that's what our intention is, but we'll let our fire chiefs help make that decision tonight.
Okay. And I guess I'd say thank you to Triad. That's a really good application of funds. Anybody have any further comment? We ready to vote? All those in favor? Great. We then have authorization to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Department of Emergency Response, Doc ID 13046. Could I get a motion? Veronica moves. Mike seconds. I did have a question on this one, but if you wanted to speak to it, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to actually have Jessica speak on it, but we're really excited about this opportunity. But Jessica's going to go over the details.
Hi, good afternoon. So we were made aware of this last month, late last month, by Homeland Security, that they were doing this program as part of New York State flood mitigation funds. I think the state ended up with 15 million, maybe a little more, and they were doing this sort of purchase for every county that wanted to participate. There is an attachment that has a list of the equipment that to be allocated to Tompkins County, especially with, let's see, a sandbag filler with sandbags and the generators, several generators and light towers and VMS boards. We felt that this was a good opportunity to help highway departments, help the city, help other areas that tend to flood. Certainly fire departments could use the pumps in order to help mitigate some of that flooding. So overall, we think this was a good program and would like to enter into that MOU with the state. These pieces of equipment will become property of ours, but the state reserves the right to inspect it and ensure that it's being maintained and upkept.
Okay. I think this is a great development. I think this is a really good idea from New York State. Certainly, I'm concerned living in the city that there's been an identified risk of significant flood events, and we have not yet seen the mitigation necessary to address it. So I think we have to be prepared to respond. I'm curious about training plans for Dewar and the various other municipalities, and where is all this going to be stored?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think we've gotten that far yet.
Okay.
I think most of it will be, I'm sorry, Jessica.
No, I think there is going to be some training from the state on how this equipment is used. It will be up to us to determine where it's stored. Many counties have decided that they're going to deploy some of these resources out to fire departments that will use them on a more regular basis. That's one option. Another option is to keep it at our facility and in a trailer, train on it, pull it out a couple times a year and make sure that it's being used or can be used and it's properly upkept. The one main concern that I have is the potential for maintenance costs, but we believe that it will be relatively little in, overall, maybe $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, after the first year or so. And maybe a replacement of sandbags.
Yeah. Lee, did you have something?
A couple of things. Outside of maybe the sandbag filler and the light towers, this is equipment the departments work with pretty regularly. So it enhances the capacity that's out there. The other thing is Jessica, does this mean no more trips to the stockpile, sending people in the middle of the night to regional centers to grab what we need when things start to flood?
Yes, sir.
That's always been a concern. I'm glad to see it getting pushed out here. I could have killed for a sandbag filler many times over the years. So that's great to see.
Now you have one. There. Good news. Okay. All right. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? There. Okay. Please enter into the MOU. And then we have authorization to accept fiscal year 2024 State Homeland Security Program Grant, Department of Emergency Response, Doc ID 13048. Michael, would you like to speak to this one?
Jess, you want to cover the grant?
Yep. So this has been budgeted. This is our regular routine Homeland Security grant. This has already been budgeted in the 2025 budget. So there's no need to make any budget adjustments or anything with this grant, but it's our standard state Homeland Security Program grant. We do split it off. There is some law enforcement monies in there that it's only for equipment. So doer will make that purchase and then the equipment belongs to law enforcement.
Okay. All right. Questions or comments? Ready to vote? All those in favor?
Rich?
Oh.
We need a mover and a seconder first.
Let's see. Mike moves, Veronica seconds. Geez, yeah. Now are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Unanimous. Great. Okay. Thank you. Anything further from Department of Emergency Response?
No, Rich, thank you.
Okay.
Rich, I don't know if the committee realizes that over the years with the budget situation, the Sheriff's Office and DOER and probably probation to some extent, we almost zeroed out a lot of the equipment lines, and the only equipment opportunities they get are through things like Triad and Homeland Security and other programs that are coming from the state. But we routinely do not put county tax dollars into heavy equipment lines, and we're depending on the departments to go out and seek these grants and apply them toward the things they need to have in addition to paying for their help. So I just congratulate them on this whole group of resolutions that have come through today that are allowing them to get the tools that the departments need to do their jobs.
Do you think we should be approaching this in a different way?
I just think, in the long term, when we go back to, maybe this is a budget conversation to be had, but, we focus so much on positions and benefits and all the things, to pay for the personnel. But I don't know that we've ever taken a long-term look at equipment and resource needs that, if these federal and state grants weren't there, we'd be looking at the local tax dollars to provide them. And certainly, even with the body cameras and so on, they're coming in through grants. And if this was being shouldered by local property taxes, it would be putting a real challenge to us. So, I know we're going to look at the budget level at different look at the budget process itself, but we ought to be cognizant of the fact that there's a lot out there that we don't even think about, that we have the benefit of those dollars. And Homeland Security has been a big part of that for the last 20 years. Didn't exist before.
Yeah.
2001.
Yeah. Well, if there's some specific equipment thoughts we should be thinking about before budget.
Jessica touched on it. We got to maintain it now that we've got it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything further for doer? Seeing none, we can move on to probation and community justice. Dan Cornell's with us. Give him a moment to come forward.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Welcome, Dan. And it looks like your reports on supervision are in line with what you've been doing? It's steady as you go.
We have 483 active supervision cases right now. I did want to just mention that we currently have 38 individuals who are homeless or in unstable housing, as that pertains to the earlier conversation. And we currently have 19 give supervision cases. Department recently had our second graduate from basic course for peace officer from the Broome County training program. Officer Wilshire completed that successfully last week. She's now back to the grind of supervising people after her 7 weeks of training. Also wanted to point out that I had attended a DCJS principle of procedural justice training and an implicit bias training that were really strong programs last week down in Broome County. And if people see those programs in the future, I would encourage people in this public safety committee to potentially attend some of those if they're able. Very, very good topic.
If you could let us know when they're coming up, that would be great.
I can do that.
Yeah. And Dan, I wanted to say thank you for your department considering helping a college initiative upstate with some space needs in the short term. So.
Yep, we're happy to do so. I think it'll be a good partnership.
Okay. The main item that I wanted to make sure we had time for today is a further discussion of the proposed policy on for certain probation officers to carry weapons. And we're on page 82 of our agenda. We've certainly had conversation about this. The draft that's in front of us, are there any changes from what we looked at last time?
There are some minor changes. I don't have them redlined. I can speak generally to them. After another community meeting, it was brought to our attention that the community would like the model for probation when we're not operating with police officers to carry concealed. So that's been included and slightly updated. There is some minor changes in language.
Maybe you'd just like to talk a little bit further about that discussion at that meeting about concealed, not concealed.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for coming to that meeting, you and Veronica as well. Probation's always tried to, we're plainclothes, we're not uniformed. We try to protect the anonymity of the people that we're supervising by, dressing professionally, but we're not showing up with marked vehicles or in a militaristic or police type of stance. We're trying to allow people to, live in their homes and have our people stop over without their neighbors necessarily figuring out that they're on probation. I think that was some of the impetus behind the community's input that continue. But they also wanted to make sure, and this is another change in the policy, that we were notifying our give offenders and all adults in their households in advance of conducting field work, that the officers who were coming to do that field work would be armed. I think that makes good sense so that we're having those conversations. I mean, the whole policy is built around transparency, the conversations that we've had, just being open with the public and with the people that we supervise about how we're conducting our business. And I think the last change was just from a latter meeting that I had with Mr. Mugambi and Sadie from URO. They wanted to know in section 13 some examples of reasons why the probation director would restrict someone's authorization to possess a firearm if they'd been approved. It would just be significant health concerns, pending criminal charges, policy violations. But those are the examples, but it's very clearly stated in here that include but not limited to. So the probation director would have authority to suspend or terminate someone's authorization to carry a firearm for basically any reason that was justified.
Okay. Questions or comments? Shauna?
How would you be notifying the person that is in the GIVE program that you would be carrying? What is the notification process?
We would be speaking with the individuals that we supervise and also asking for information, contact information for any adult who resides with them, so that we could also have a conversation with those individuals, either telephonically or in person, have them come to the office and just explain what our new practice is so that everyone's on the same page. We talked about all members of households, but I think it really needs to be all adult members of households, and then adult members of households can do with that information as they want, as far as people who are underage, whether they're telling them about that or not telling them about that.
I'm just wondering, would it make more sense to provide something written so that it, I would just hate for there to be a policy and for there not to be some type of acceptance of.
Well, the way the policy reads, actually, and this policy, people need to know, is extremely unique. There probably is no other policy in the state of New York that's like this. There are essentially two models for probation officers carrying firearms. There's either their full carry, where they carry in the office and the field all the time. There's field carry, where they only carry in the field, which is where we started. And we've basically created a third model, which is situational carry, that's very specific. So the way the policy reads is that we would notify all adult members of the household prior to conducting field contact when practicable, because we cannot, in order to supervise people, I can't guarantee that in every situation I'm going to be able to communicate with every adult member of a household before we need to conduct field contacts. Mm-hmm. And that could be, could be some manipulation put in place where, oh, well, my cousin moved in and you didn't tell him about it, so now you can't come do home contacts until you tell my cousin about it, or whatever it may be. So, I mean, your suggestion that we have people sign something, I'd be willing to consider it. I think it could be utilized to, again, be a manipulation where if someone's been told, and we're documenting that they've been told in real time in our case record management system, it's documented. It happened on Tuesday the 28th at 3:30. I spoke with so-and-so, informed them. It's documented. We can't go back and change that note or anything. There's no way for us to hide it. Because
I didn't realize there was the documentation that you would be noting in
well,
your notes.
Absolutely. Our case record management system, we would document all those contacts and their time and date stamp that cannot be changed.
Okay.
If the desire is, I mean, if we can have people sign something, I think it's great, but I think it should not be, if we don't have something signed, I don't think that should be a prohibition as long as we've had the conversation.
Okay. Anybody else? I would say that the community meeting and the changes that came from that, I think were helpful. I think that was really good. So, yeah. I feel comfortable proceeding with moving this to the full legislature, but I see we don't have a resolution in front of us. What's the thinking of the committee? You want to wait for a resolution, or do you feel comfortable we could move it and vote and move it forward? Do we want to talk about it more?
We had a draft resolution a few months ago. Does it change that draft substantially? You really just spent the interim developing a very exhaustive policy to go with that resolution, correct?
Yes, sir.
I don't have a problem moving it forward.
Do we want more time? Veronica?
I'd rather have a resolution, unless, I can't remember the time line or how much waiting on this is delaying your progress, but I think I'd feel better if there were, since there was a resolution the first time, I'd feel better if.
Check to see if we have it still.
I'd feel better, I mean, if we did this at the next committee meeting, not for the time, but for the sake of having it as a voting item on the agenda that goes out to the public.
Okay, I wasn't aware that it wasn't a voting item, so if it's an information-only item, then.
Yeah, somehow it ended up just as report discussion. That is a good point. I feel like we should be able to move this on, and I appreciate the delay. You've been talking to us about this since, I think, last summer. I remember it was warm out, but here we are. I guess if we want to take another month, that's okay. You know, it would give the public a chance to come in if they had strong feelings on this. Frankly, I think you've been really responsible in trying to think it through and to adapt to anybody's concerns. So I feel we're ready, but.
No, if there's additional opportunity or need for community input, then we should go that route. And I know, I believe in speaking with Mona that Talib did want to make a public comment today, but was unable to. So,
okay,
there may be other members who want to speak to it.
Well, what's everybody thinking? Take this up at February meeting?
Rich?
Yeah.
The legislature did adopt a resolution authorizing the arming of designated probation officers. There just wasn't a policy that went along with it, and that was back in September of 2024. So it did authorize the arming of designated officers, but that wasn't the policy didn't go along with it. So I think we should have a resolution to formally adopt the policy.
Okay, so we passed the resolution saying we can do it, but pending in the policy. Okay, Mike.
Do we normally adopt policies like that? Or do we usually have the departments set them? We do adopt?
Yes, we do. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And in this case, given the concern about it, I think it makes sense for us to fully state where we are. Okay, but there was a resolution already in place, so it was pending this policy. So really all we'd be doing was approve what's before us. But I do take the point that there was a member of the public that wanted to address this. Would there be any impact on the department waiting another month?
Just that everything will be delayed another month.
I know that there were some training. You said it, even if it was passed, it wouldn't go into effect right away. Are you ready to go into effect?
The step, once everyth's approved at the legislature level, at the county level, then I would submit the policy to DCJS for their review and approval. Once they review it and give us the approval, then we would seek the psychological assessments for our staff when everyone passes. I may not pass. If we all pass the psychological exam, then we would need to acquire the tools and then establish the training and complete that before anyone will be carrying.
Okay. Well, what's the thinking on the committee members? Veronica spoke up. What about everybody else?
I'm fine waiting another month. I mean, I will say that I will not be supporting it. However, I think it is important to make sure that people know that we're going through with this. I don't want it to ever be said that we snuck this past anyone and it didn't go through process.
Mike?
I'm comfortable moving it today. I mean, I don't think anybody doesn't know we're moving ahead with this. I mean, we voted on it.
Yeah.
Now it's just policy. And if you're unhappy with the policy, that's one thing.
Yeah.
I'm not unhappy with the policy, so.
Okay. Lee?
I don't hear any objections to the policy as presented, and there would be an opportunity to speak to it at the full legislature meeting.
We can formulate a resolution on the fly.
There's a good point, though.
We've done it before.
Then the resolution would be to approve the policy as proposed from our September resolution.
Yes, and we would reference the September resolution saying that there was authorization for that.
Yeah.
Mona, I would like to hear from Mona and see what, if there were any other comments, concerns about this.
Yeah, Mona, why don't you come up,
this
please.
policy in that meeting.
I think Dan covered most of the questions or comments that we had in that last session. It was about, there was a lot about training and then notification and concealed and unconcealed. So, I mean, I can pull up the notes. I have the notes from the meeting up on my computer screen back there, but pretty much that's what it covered. And I think people are under the understanding that today's meeting, this draft was going to be looked at and then even possibly voted on. I actually whispered to Dan a couple minutes ago, are they voting on this today?
I thought so.
So, yeah, and they were welcome to reach out. Rich opened up his contact information for people to reach out to him with any questions or further comments, and then also invited to this meeting today to come and speak if they still had questions or concerns.
I feel pretty comfortable. We have talked about this, and the public has had chances to come forward. I take the point about I never want to be accused of not being transparent and open, but I think we have been. And if this was passed today, would it be on the resolution for next week?
As long as I have it ready for tomorrow, then yes.
Okay. I think that would give members of the public who are concerned a chance to come speak to the full legislature and weigh in if they have any further concerns. So I'm comfortable proceeding today, I guess.
I'll move it.
Okay. Mike seconds. Further discussion? This is a resolution to adopt the policy as amended and to move it to the full legislature for adoption there. Okay. Ready to vote? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that's 3 to...
Sorry, I meant to vote in favor.
Oh, in favor. Okay, 4 to 1. All right. Thank you, everybody. I know this has been a careful subject in it, but I think we've treated it pretty carefully. Yeah, Lee.
Before we lose Dan, just going back to the beginning of your report, you've got 460 people on average under supervision in the county, and currently 38 of those are believed to be homeless.
Homeless or unstable housing, so we consider that to be couch surfing or at imminent risk of losing they're housed with an imminent risk of losing. And that's self-reported based on conversations that our officers have with the people that we're working with, and then verified by home contact.
That's an interesting statistic. One in 12, roughly, of the cases you're supervising are in an unstable housing situation.
Yes.
And then when you start to look at, again, the numbers in the community, come at it from the other direction. If we're saying there's 130 people or whatever that number may be, and 38 of those are under probation supervision, you know, that there's something there that folds into the overall homeless discussion.
I think you're right, Lee. I really do. Mike.
Actually counterintuitive too. I mean, these people you would think would be easier to place. They're already under supervision. We already knew who they are. We have their social. We're probably already in some type of services. So you would think that.
And they have an advocate.
Yeah, I mean, they've got they've got a lot there. All they kind of need is more stable housing. So I know that is counterintuitive. I'm not saying go commit a crime, but.
Please no. Yeah. Well, that's a longer discussion, I think, but an important one. I hope we continue it. So, all right. Dan, any other items you want to bring to our attention today?
No, I appreciate everyone's patience with this and thoughtfulness about it, and we will proceed with equal amounts of thoughtfulness and intentionality. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, we have assigned counsel, and Lance Salisbury could not attend today. He is on his way to a conference, I think, in Albany. So
is he riding with Matt?
He might be.
Okay.
He might be. I think they're not. I think they were driving separately. Different conferences, maybe.
Oh.
I'd love to be in the back seat.
But he did provide a written report, and it does seem like things are proceeding on a pretty stable keel at assigned counsel, and it's largely a result of the changes in the rates that it's been enough to attract assigned counsel, and they're covering the cases. You know, I think he also made a comment about the cap court, that he thought that what we did in terms of adding some funding for the district attorney to attend has been a really good development. It's made things faster and clearer. So, yeah. Okay. Any other business to come before the Public Safety Committee? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved, seconded. All those in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
You've made up for the last couple where we were out of here in a short period of time.
Yeah.